Good evening. On behalf of the Kuwait Foundation for the Advancement of Sciences, it is my great pleasure to welcome you all to this KFAS Links event. The role of KFAS revolves around promoting science, technology, and innovation as we transform Kuwait into a knowledge-based economy. The investments we make and networks we create feed into the capacity-building programs which we offer to Kuwait's private sector. Our vision is to position the Kuwaiti private sector as a leader in business innovation in our fast-changing times. We do this by tackling their challenges at their very core. Tonight, we are pleased to have Dr. Jay Rao join us to share his insights on corporate culture and to show us how the climate of an enterprise can truly inspire creativity, which leads to business growth. Tonight's talk will focus on how we can foster a climate of innovation within our organizations and our direct teams. Without further ado, please join me in welcoming Dr. Jay Rao from Babson College. Thank you.
Firstly, it's a great honor for me and my Babson team to be here with all of you, and also like to thank the executive team of KFAS for being here this evening, and also the team of KFAS for facilitating this program for us. So let me kind of get started. Again, thank you all for coming this evening. How many of you have heard of Babson? Oh, wow, that's pretty good. That's pretty impressive. We are a very small school, and I'm going to give a very brief introduction about Babson so the rest of you may know who we are. And so the agenda, when I look at the title was sent a couple of weeks ago or probably a few months ago. And then when I started to prepare for this, I said, oh my God, I've picked all the choicest buzzwords that you can find around. You know, entrepreneurship is incredibly sexy nowadays. And innovation is probably the most, misused, overused, or abused words that you can find. If you go to Google and type that word, you can only see how many times that word is used. And you kind of top that innovation word with culture, again, it just completely explodes. So I kind of wanted to make sure that we get some clarity around these words. So that'll be my first challenge, to kind of pick all these huge words that we keep throwing all around. But why is there so much interest? Why is that people are talking about it, executives are talking about it, governments are talking about it? So we need to understand the context in which that these words are being used today. And so that context is what we call as this VUCA world. How many of you have heard of this term VUCA? V-U-C-A. Maybe not H probably, but V-U-C-A. Okay, very good. 1, 2. Can you roughly tell us what this VUCA is? What exactly is this volatility, uncertainty, ambiguity? I'm going to be very interactive, so I'm going to ask you questions. Is that all right? Yeah? Okay. So we'll go deeper into this, okay? And then I'm going to kind of talk about how do companies actually counter this VUCA? How do we manage it? How do we make sure that we thrive and survive and be successful in this VUCA world? And one way to do that is to kind of really approach innovation as a science. Today, innovation is not creativity. Innovation is not magic. Innovation is not luck. Today, innovation is a science. And I'm going to go deeper into that notion of innovation as a science. But managing innovation as a science is not only sufficient. We need to couple that with what we look at as entrepreneurial leadership and the culture of innovation. When you combine this management of innovation by approaching it as a science and have an enterprise that is innovative and creative, that will give a much better competitive advantage for most corporations, most enterprises. So that is the basic thing that I'll hopefully cover in the next 45 minutes. And also, please stop me, ask me questions anytime. Is that all right? So again, if I'm going too fast, you can ask me to slow down. Yeah? Is the agenda all right? Okay, good. So those of you who may not know Babson, we are a very small school in the Boston area with about 2,000 students. But there's one thing that we are well known for. Many of our students go and start companies soon after they graduate. In fact, as an 18-year-old, when you're coming to Babson, the first day, you're put into a team. And Sarah knows this. We have an amazing ambassador here. And you're put into a team. Each team is given $3,000, and you have to start a company. You have no choice. And for a whole year, you're running a business. And it's not theoretical. It is complete immersion in entrepreneurship. So you see many of the other big names are, in fact, as well there. So what we kind of claim is that we develop these entrepreneurial leaders for an increasingly VUCA world. When we say VUCA, uncertainty, ambiguity, what kind of things come to your mind? What is uncertainty?
Scary.
Huh?
Scary world.
Scary world. What else?
Chaos.
Chaos. What else?
Disruption.
Disruption. Yeah? What other words do you use that may be close to uncertainty? Risk. Risk. Is risk same as uncertainty?
Yes.
Yes? Kind of?
Calculated risk.
Oh, calculated risk.
Unknown.
Huh?
Unknown.
What is unknown? Unknown comes with uncertainty. How about risk then? We use all these words all the time, don't we? Okay. Which words do you use most common inside your own organizations? Is it risk or is it uncertainty?
Risk.
Ah, most of the world uses the word risk. But unfortunately, yes?
I think uncertainty is the nature of life.
Yeah?
Risk is what people feel against uncertainty.
Huh. What do you think?
Yes, it's like if I understood him right,
Yeah.
risk is like the predicted uncertainty. Whatever we can predict in the future, whether short term or long term.
Okay.
But uncertainty by itself is the unknown, no matter what you do.
You're so close. You're using the words unknown. But what is risk? Is unknown uncertainty or is risk uncertainty unknown? Identifying the unknown. Okay. I'm not going to keep you that long.
Quantifying the consequences.
Exactly. Risk can be calculated. You can actually measure risk. Risk you can calculate because risk is about the known world. Uncertainty is about the unknown world. Risk is about existing products, existing technologies, existing markets, existing competitors, and you have data. You have data from version X of iPhone, not yet, version 8, version 7, version 6, version 5, and you can put it in a spreadsheet. And you can calculate risk. You have distributions, you have probability assignments, and you can calculate it. Uncertainty is about uncharted markets, unproven technologies, untested business models, unidentified customers, and you don't have data. You can't put it into a spreadsheet. And yet, as entrepreneurs, as leaders, as executives, you need to make decisions for the future. So we have two types of individuals. We have risk managers and we have uncertainty navigators. And they are very different. Okay? So that's the fundamental difference when we talk about entrepreneurship, when we talk of entrepreneurial leadership, and we talk of innovation, we talk of strategy, we have to understand that fundamental difference between risk and uncertainty. So with that starting point, I'm not going to go through all this. I've already talked about it. What does Babson do? How do we train entrepreneurs? 40% or more of all our students come from family businesses. When you're coming from family businesses and when you want to start companies, you are the CEO or the future CEO taking over your family businesses. So you need to be thinking like a CEO. So from day one, we are training CEOs at Babson. We are training not just risk managers, but we are actually training uncertainty navigators. We are training ambiguity explorers. The known, 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 unknown, unknown, unknown. There are 15,000 publicly traded companies globally. Just 15,000. Estimates say there are more than 100 million companies globally, but only 15,000 of them, 4,000 in Asia and Middle East, 4,000 in Europe, 4,000 in the Americas. It's a small, tiny number compared to all the corporations, all the businesses globally. And if you want to be a risk manager, if you want to really have an impact on Wall Street, then you will be a risk manager. That's what you are. And publicly traded companies, they want a return in 1 year, 6 months, maybe at times 3 months. Ambiguity is about returns in 10 years, 7 years, 10 years, 15 years, very long returns. Many times, hundreds of millions of dollars of investment, perhaps even billions of dollars. How many of you use Uber? Okay, a lot of you use Uber. How much did Uber lose last year? You got it? Lose. How much money did they lose? Huh?
Few billion.
A few billion. $3 billion they lost. Okay? How many of you have $3 billion to lose? Okay? In the US, nearly 600,000 companies are born every year. But only 0.2% of them get venture funding. Very tiny number. Very, very, very tiny number. And this is a country which has the maximum amount of angel and venture funding. So globally, you can only imagine that number is even smaller, even tinier. We leave the management of these publicly traded firms to these schools. We leave the management of all of these to these schools. Our focus is very different. We are focusing on people who want a return in a couple of years, modest investments, a couple of $100,000, maybe a few $1 million, but making sure that you do get a return without losing a couple of $1 billion. So is the positioning of Babson clear? If you want to know more about Babson, please talk to my colleagues here, Vinod and Carl, and they will tell you a lot more about it. But how do we train? How do we train these great entrepreneurs? How do we train future family business CEOs? From day one, we make sure that you're trained in these three aspects: strategy, innovation, and entrepreneurial leadership. The most difficult piece is culture. And we make sure that they are multidextrous, not just ambidextrous. They're multidextrous in all of these activities. Because strategy is primarily about growth. There are not 17 ways, there are not 100 ways that companies can grow. Essentially, they can grow in two ways. You have money, you can go buy another company. And anybody can do that. You don't have to be a genius if you have a lot of money to go buy another company. And most of the time when you're buying another company, you're actually buying either an existing customer or an existing business model or maybe a positive cash flow, which means that you're actually buying risk. But creating something from nothing, organic growth, is much, 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 much more difficult, period. Again, if I give you $10 million, $15 million, yes, you can create organic growth. Again, you don't have to be a genius if you're able to raise $200 million and get started. But we train entrepreneurs to start companies with very little resources and not throwing money at creating organic growth. That is much more difficult. So we focus on a very difficult problem, and we leave the easy problems of buying to other schools. Innovation can only happen in two ways: incremental, radical. iPhone 3, iPhone 4, iPhone 5, I have data, and I make decisions based on data. And again, that is risk. But if I have to create iPhone 1, that is a lot of uncertainty, a lot of ambiguity. As I've been saying, risk managers, every undergraduate business student, every MBA globally gets trained in risk management. Don't get me wrong, risk management is fundamental to a company's existence. Risk management is fundamental to existing cash flows. Without risk management, there is no corporation, no business. So I'm not diminishing the value of risk management. Everybody has to have it, every manager has to have it. But there are an abundance of risk managers globally. Abundance, millions and millions and millions of risk managers, and they are cheap. That's the best news, is that they are cheap. I can go buy risk managers. But there is a scarcity. There is a dearth of uncertainty navigators. There's a dearth of ambiguity explorers. And that's where, again, we focus how we train future entrepreneurs and CEOs of corporations. As companies grow, there's only one thing that will always grow: autocracy and bureaucracy. That I can guarantee you. And as companies grow, we lose two things: customer intimacy and customer immediacy, speed. And usually these entrepreneurial leaders make sure that they never lose touch with that customer intimacy and customer immediacy. Again, those skills are amazingly scarce. As executives go up in the ladder, they will lose touch with the market. They'll lose touch with customers. But we train our students to make sure that they are amazingly close to the customer, amazingly fast. So when we try to develop ecosystems, when we try to work with governments, when we try to work with entrepreneurial leaders, this is this holistic approach that we take in order to train their executive skills, or what we call as the entrepreneurial leader skills. Questions so far? It can't be that clear.
To ask the question, please let them speak with the microphone.
Yes.
The microphone
Can you announce that to everybody? Yeah.
there is a microphone on every seat, so please press red button and speak for the question.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Let's look at the competitive environment. The way I can think of the competitive environment, the context in which we need to play this game, the VUCA game. I look at the world in terms of gorillas, chimpanzees, and monkeys. Okay? What do we mean by this? A corporation can be a gorilla, like General Electric or Coca-Cola, okay, or Nestle. But in a particular product or a particular market, there could be a monkey. Example: General Motors, Ford, Chrysler. Who are they? Are they gorillas or monkeys or chimpanzees? Gorillas. Very clearly they're gorillas. But if you go to Japan, the three gorillas combined have less than 1% market share in Japan. So in Japan they are
Chimps or monkeys.
a monkey. A monkey. Okay? Also, can you think of examples of a monkey or a young company that has become a gorilla very quickly? Less than 10 years maybe. Facebook, Google, WhatsApp, Snapchat, very good, great examples. How did these monkeys become gorillas so quickly? Is the question clear? Okay. So this is the focus that we always have. I'll give you an example of a monkey that became a gorilla very quickly. This is a company called Chobani. It's less than 10 years old. And it was started only with one product, selling Greek yogurt in the United States. Within 5 years, Chobani became the gorilla in Greek yogurt, just with one product inside the United States. Danone, everybody knows Danone? 100-year-old gorilla. General Mills, 150-year-old gorilla. Okay. And yet this monkey was able to become number one in 5 years. Not with billions of dollars, not with venture funding, not with mega angels throwing money at it. The founder took $17,000 of loan to start Chobani. Okay. But within 10 years, today Chobani is not just in Greek yogurt, they are in all of yogurt, all of globally, they're number 2. So how do monkeys do this? How do monkeys grow to become chimpanzees and get to become gorillas in 5 to 10 years with very little money, strategy, and innovation, and entrepreneurial leadership? Okay? So every country, every industry have gorillas, chimpanzees, monkeys. Gorillas, chimpanzees, monkeys. So it doesn't matter. That's the structure of the game. That's the nature of competition. So how can monkeys beat gorillas? Do you recognize some of these? What about them? They're all dead. They're all dead. Okay? They are dead gorillas. Is that all right? So here is the bad news. All firms die. Every firm dies. Statistically, all your companies will also die. Okay? Statistically. Okay? Companies are born, companies die. Companies get into an industry, they leave the industry. Okay? So it's just fact of life. Today we are all listening to music on our cell phones. There was a time we used to listen on our MP3 players. Before that, CD portable players. Before that, boombox. Did anybody have a boombox? Yeah. So, and every time the game changed, guess what? A couple of gorillas died. Okay? So we have now a lot of evidence. Every time technology changes, gorillas die. 100 years ago, Remington was a gorilla. IBM was a monkey. The monkey beat the gorilla. 60 years later, IBM had become a gorilla. Lang was a monkey. Again, the monkey beats the gorilla. 40 years ago, many of you were not born here. And these two companies were monkeys. They beat the gorilla. Monkey beats gorilla, monkey beats gorilla. Ah, bad news, gorilla beats monkey. Ah, good news, another monkey comes and beats the gorilla. They become a gorilla, but another monkey comes and beats the gorilla. So we see that monkeys have the abilities to beat gorillas, not just in technology products. They have the ability to beat gorillas in retail, in services, in sports, in politics, in many, many, many spheres of life, we see the ability of monkeys to beat gorillas. But there are many challenges, there are many questions. Does it happen in every industry? Does it happen in every country? Does it happen in every part of the world? Does it happen in Kuwait? Maybe? What do you think? I see your head shaking. Be very careful. To an Indian, don't shake head. We never know what exactly that head shaking means.
I think.
Okay? Yeah. Please tell me what you have in mind. Why did you shake your head?
One brand called BQ beaten Shaya, the largest gorilla in Kuwait, in yogurt.
Excellent example. What else? I saw one more hand go up.
Yeah, I was going to say we have a lot of monkeys, definitely.
Yeah.
Especially recently.
Good.
In the past 5 years.
Excellent. There is hope. That's great. I love to hear local examples. Okay? In fact, we are seeing data. We are collecting data that this phenomena is happening globally, across all regions, across all countries. Bad news for the gorillas. This is United States data. Gorillas are dying. The average age of gorillas are going down. An average US gorilla used to live for 60 years in 1960. Today they live for about 15 to 20 years. Globally, that data is also very similar. The largest 1,000 companies in the world, the average age is going down. Not only is the average age of gorillas going down globally, if you were a global gorilla in 1980, it took 18 years for 50% of them to die. If you were a global gorilla in 1985, it took 14 years. So these gorillas are dying faster, faster, faster. What do you think the reasons are? Technology. In what? Innovation, specifically the ability of monkeys to use these technologies. Yes?
The focus on customers, I think, is one of the key things that...
Absolutely. Gorillas lose focus on the customers. What else? What else happens?
The speed of adapting to change.
Absolutely, because gorillas become slow and bureaucratic and autocratic. Okay, many, many, many reasons. Yes?
touch with the environment they are in.
Absolutely. Okay, yes?
It's the nature of the VUCA world.
Nature of the VUCA world. Welcome to the VUCA world. Okay?
Is it the possibility of creating new needs?
Absolutely. We are able to now create new needs. How many of us in 2003 there was a little change and a small incremental innovation. Nobody cared for it. Some of you were toddlers at that time. Okay, we didn't even know that it would change the world. And it was called a little tiny stupid thing called front-facing camera. Did anybody remember that? No. Nobody even knows when it happened. Do you remember the company that introduced the front-facing camera? No. But what happened? It changed our entire behavior forever. It did it. The monkey now, which is a gorilla, Snapchat would not even exist. Okay? Was this a huge mega innovation? No, it was a tiny little thing. And yet it completely changed everything. Okay? So, welcome to the VUCA world. The data now shows there is no sustainable competitive advantage. Please get that word. Every strategy class that you have learned, every great big gorilla named business schools, professors who come and tell you sustainable competitive advantage, no. Bullshit, garbage. Sorry, excuse my words. Okay. Okay. He won't apologize. I apologize. Okay. There is no sustainable competitive advantage. All competitive advantage is limited in time and space. specific market, specific time period. That's it. That's it.
I think that it is something very similar to, maybe you haven't heard of it because.
So everybody can hear you, please. Yes.
I think it's very similar to when Talabat was in Kuwait, and then it became a huge thing, and then like the owner had like something in his mind, and when the German company offered him to buy the company, he did not refuse. He actually thought of, okay, let me sell it.
Yeah.
He knew that there was a company coming out like Carriage to overcome Talabat, and then they just went on a fleek. Everybody's all about Carriage, all about Talabat, all about online ordering food. When sometime back then you were like, am I stupid? Why would I actually order something online? Like, hello, can I have my blah, blah, blah meal?
Yeah.
You know, who thought you would be getting your food online?
Of course.
And then this is something that like changed the whole behavior. Oh, guys, what do you want? Tick, tick, tick. Everything is at your doorstep.
We humans are amazingly terrible at predicting our own behaviors. We are just horrible predictors of the future, period. The data is also very clear. And the people who really want you to predict, that's the stock exchange, they are the worst predictors. Okay? Nobody ever predicted. The superstars of oil never predicted that the oil prices would come down from $120 to $30. Daniel Yergin, the biggest name in consulting in oil, did not predict that. Nobody in the oil industry ever predicted that US will become somewhat self-sufficient in oil and fracking. So we spend so much time in trying to predict the future that we actually we lose a lot of value. You have a comment, sir? Yes, please.
I have a question regarding uncertainty and ambiguity.
Yes, please.
So, do you think AI will determine uncertainty and ambiguity in the future?
Very good question. Very good question. Will artificial intelligence be able to better predict uncertainty and ambiguity? Many people have asked me this. Will machine learning, artificial intelligence, help us in actually reducing uncertainty, or in fact turning uncertainty into risk? I don't know. I don't know. There's a very simple, I have my own internal filter to measure that. And that is how much junk mail I get every day. Do you all get junk mail in your house?
Yes.
Do you get a lot or do you get a little? I get a lot. Okay? And I am the customer of Bank of America. Okay? And Bank of America is one of the biggest abusers of junk mail. They flood my mail with junk. Okay? One day I even picked up the phone and called them and said, look guys, you have all my money already. Already you have all my money. You have my mortgage, you have my savings accounts, you have my kids' accounts, you have everything. You have my retirement account. I have no more money to give you. And you guys are already spending so much money on big data and data analytics and predictive analytics and you name it, they're doing it. But my junk mail has not reduced. Okay? All technology is useless if it doesn't change the customer experience. All technology has to be in the service of customer experience. If it is not, it is just a toy for the rich or for the people who are having fun. Okay? So, when technologies help us improve our lives, help us solve problems, and improve our experiences, then it is of value. But unfortunately, people fall in love with technology. In innovation, there are two things. There's the problem definition and there's the solution definition. Technology is not a part of the problem definition. It's a part of the solution definition. Most of the problems are to do with experience, quality of life. Okay? And so our obsession with technology, I'm not saying we don't need technology. Technology is amazingly impactful for innovation and health and quality of life. But unfortunately, we fall in love with technology and really not with customer experience. So good question, but I don't have good answer, sorry.
Can I comment on
Yes, please.
I think AI nowadays has just started to be available to consumers.
Yeah.
So I believe it will have the same impact in the future, just like the example you mentioned about the front-facing camera.
Yeah.
We yet not have seen.
No idea.
It's unpredictable, uncertain. So I believe there is a huge room for innovation in the AI paradigm.
Absolutely. Many of the technologies. When GPS came, we had no idea the impact the GPS would have on all of humanity, right? All GPS was done was, oh my God, the Soviets have launched a spacecraft. How do we know? How do we make sure that we know where it is? And so let's invent something to track the Soviet spacecraft. That was the reason why it was invented. But today, we can't live without GPS. And at that time, nobody had a clue how GPS would be used. Even my cat has a GPS. Okay, for $30, they put a GPS in my cat. Okay, so the cat runs away, you can track the cat. So boyfriends, be careful, you know where the GPS is going in next. Okay, so how we are hoping that the VUCA world, how do we counter the VUCA? How do we manage VUCA? We are hoping that innovation is the answer. Executives are thinking innovation is the answer. How do we get people out of poverty? We hope innovation is an answer. We hope technology is an answer. Okay? So many challenges in not just for corporations, but for not-for-profits as well as for life in general. As I said before, innovation is not luck. Innovation is not creativity. Innovation is not invention. Today, innovation is a discipline. It's a knowledge base. It's a field of study. What is the meaning of innovation as a science? What are the implications for us? To make something better. What do we mean by science? Something that is measurable. Very good.
I think there's attributes for innovation like experiment, change.
You can have a hypothesis and you can experiment. What else is the meaning of science?
You mentioned a very good example about the girl, your bank, Bank of America, and customer experience, for example. Now, if you want to compare it with, let's say, Netflix, if you go on Netflix, they've created some kind of algorithms, analysis, to recommend videos that you would like.
Absolutely. And in fact, they're claiming,
using science,
they are claiming,
improving customer experience.
Absolutely. They're claiming that you will give a better rating on movies that were suggested by them than the one that you pick yourself. Facebook today is telling that by the time you have 7 thumbs up, they know you so well. They know your mindset and your behavior. By the time you have about 10 or 12 thumbs up, you know the thumbs up for Facebook, that in fact they know you better than your own parents know you. By the time you get, I don't know, these numbers are all approximate. You can find it on the internet. Okay? They're saying by the time you know you have 23 thumbs up, they know you better than all your social and your family network. Okay? Probably they're using a lot of the AI and machine learning and stuff like that. Okay? Let's get back to science. What is the meaning of science?
In simple terms, anything which can be learned.
Which can be learned. What else? There is a methodology. It is not madness. There is a language. All sciences have their own language, their own concepts, their own methodologies, their own tools. What is the meaning of that? We can then learn it. We can teach it. We can learn it. What else can we do with it? Before we measure it, what can we do? We can practice it. We can apply it. We can practice it. We can practice it. We can practice it. And we can we can master it. And then we can measure it. So a company like 3M, you know 3M? Yeah. For many years, they have been measuring their own level of organic growth, their own measure of innovation. Today, the pharmaceutical industry, they have their own metric called the freshness index. What percentage of the revenues are coming from molecules or medicines that didn't exist 3 or 4 years ago? Because there is a method, because there is a process, because there is an application, because there is a repetition, because there is learning, we are able to measure it. So I'm not going to go through all this, but how do we approach it again? In a systematic, structured manner. Innovation. Here is the bad news. Innovation is a social science. It's not a formal science. It's not a natural science. Physics, chemistry, biology, they are natural sciences. There are laws of nature that dictate what we can do, what we cannot do. Finance, accounting, everything that's digital, 0, 1. Those are formal sciences. There are rules of logic that tells you what you can do, what you cannot do. But innovation is like economics. It's like sociology. It's like psychology, where there are no laws of nature or rules of logic. We only have general principles. What works in one country may not actually work in another country. For every example, you have a counterexample. Okay? So that's the challenge when it comes to innovation. But entrepreneurial leaders, they have the ability to use innovation as a weapon. Innovation is a weapon to change the game, the dynamics in the marketplace, or add significant value to society. These entrepreneurial leaders can be in any type of organization. Small, medium, large, for-profit, not-for-profit, government, everywhere. You'll find entrepreneurial leaders in all walks of life, in every type of an enterprise. When you have scarce resources, innovation is the weapon of this entrepreneurial leader. And the good news is that there are no 1, 2, or 3. There are dozens and dozens and dozens of ways to innovate. Unfortunately, innovation can be either organized or disorganized. If you're an individual entrepreneur, all you need to do is probably once, as I think the example that you provided. And then I say, hey, you know what? I've done it. I'm out of here. But if you're a medium or a slightly larger business and you have to survive for a longer period of time, you need to do it again and again and again. And for that, you need organized innovation. Okay? So how can we organize innovation? One is for enterprises to live longer, to thrive, and make sure that you have a slightly better sustainable advantage, we need to kind of organize ourselves around innovation. So one is that use it as a science, and number 2, create a culture where you keep reinventing yourself. That gives you a much better sustainable advantage. So if you kind of look at science, the innovation of science, I think I've covered all of this, so I'm not going to go through this, okay? So what have we learned so far? Very simple kind of things that will get us kind of thinking about innovation as a science. For example, what we see is that if you look at the example of high jump, people were not jumping above a certain height before 1910. So they had to change the method of jumping. Then they reached another level, a plateau. Again, they changed the method of jumping. Again, they reached another plateau. So again, they changed. In the last 20, 25 years, we haven't broken that record. Can we predict what is the next technique that will break this world record? Oh? Type of shoes, maybe? Yeah. So this is what we call as the unknown world. And this is what we call as the known world. Okay? The other thing we need to understand is that all progress happens in two formats. Incremental, radical. Incremental, radical. So if you look at all science, all technology, all business models, go incrementally, radically, incrementally, radically, incrementally, radically. So performance goes up incrementally, radically. At the same time, costs come down incrementally, radically. This was the process, and these were the inputs in the early days. But then there was a new process that completely changed the inputs and dramatically reduced the inputs, and the costs went down radically. So we see that costs also come down incrementally, radically. So the way the world moves is primarily performance going up incrementally, radically, costs coming down incrementally, radically. So all science, basically, this is a mental model for you to think about how the world moves. Incremental is the known world, lean Kaizen, and unknown world is about continuous experimentation. All corporations, all entities, all organizations is nothing but a collection of projects. That is all it is. We are all project managers, period. And all projects you can put into one of these buckets, either continuous improvement, incremental, or radical. That's it. And in both these cases, we can innovate. We can be creative. And we can change the game. We can change the dynamics of competition. Or we can add value to society in a significant way. To go and understand this whole science of innovation, you need to come to a program or come to Babson. We'll spend 3 days. Okay? I'm not going to go in there. Okay? So I'm going to leave you. I have 3 minutes left. I want to just talk a little about the culture piece. Today, we know that if you combine science and if you combine culture, it is a much more powerful weapon than just one of them. So how do you create an innovation sandbox where you can bring together science and culture? If you understand how innovation has progressed over the years, in the early days, we used to think invention was innovation. So many companies just went after patents. They accumulated lots and lots and lots of patents. Even today, companies like IBM and Samsung and Siemens, they collect hundreds and thousands of patents. But then they realized that the productivity of patents is very low. 3%, 2%, 5%. That's when they realized that just getting patents is insufficient. They need to actually bring products to market. They have to commercialize those patents. So in the 80s, NPD, a new product development, became huge, became big. And we understood NPD a lot. But at the same time, the Japanese came in and kind of started to commoditize many of the products with much lower cost, like exactly what the Chinese are doing today. And so that's when process innovation became very important. And we learned to do process innovation. And also to decommoditize our products. Companies started to bundle services around these products. So that's when service innovation became important. The word service innovation in the 80s, today it's called customer experience, #CX, #UX. It's the same pig with a new lipstick. Is that all right? Okay. So that became important. And then came the dot-coms. And monkeys like Napster, Kazaa, LimeWire, Donkey Kong, BitTorrent, Torrent, I know none of you have ever used that, and none of you have ever stole music. Okay? And many of these software created by monkeys brought down many big industries. And that's when business model innovation became important. But in the last 10 years, there is a lot of research. Why are gorillas dying? Why are they dying faster? Because now they know that technology alone is not going to give you that competitive advantage. A specific product or a specific business model may not give you that sustainable competitive advantage. So Booz Allen did research for nearly about 10 years among the top 1,000 companies in the world. And after 10 years, they concluded it is not one technology, not one process, not one business model that gave you the competitive advantage. In fact, it was culture. That was much better in giving you that advantage of reinvention every time. So today we are thinking culture of innovation is an incredibly powerful weapon. And if you combine that with the science of innovation, of systematically managing our projects, will give you a much better competitive advantage. And the good news is that enterprise culture is more powerful than national culture. Because in every country I go to, whether it is Chile, whether it's Scotland, whether it's China, or whether it's Kuwait, the first thing that executives and managers will tell you, oh, JJJ, this works in the US, it doesn't work here. Oh, you don't understand Kuwait. Oh, no, it doesn't happen here. I don't take that excuse. Because again, there is good research to show that there are great innovative companies in every country. And in spite of the national culture, these enterprises are able to innovate and be world class. So I'm going to stop here. I'm already 2 minutes out. So I'm going to just open it up for questions. Because if you want to hear more about innovation, culture, and all of this, you can come to Babson, all right? Or unless KFAS is going to invite me back. Okay. So please, questions for 2 or 3 minutes. Yes, please.
Yes, I just wanted to ask, is innovation itself a means of sustainable competitive advantage?
Innovation combined with culture. Okay? There are, ever since the Fortune 500 list was created in the United States, more than 50 years ago, nearly 2,000 companies have been on that list. But only about 60 companies have been on that list every year for 50 years. And I research many of these companies, like 3M, like IBM, like Procter & Gamble, like Johnson & Johnson. Many of these companies, they're able to create an organization independent of products and markets and services and technologies and business models. And they are able to sustain that. And the average age of these 60 companies is 118. And they have beaten out the average age of a US Fortune 500 company, not by 1 sigma, not by 2 sigma, but by more than 6 sigma. Okay. Yes, I do believe that. Other questions? Yes, sir.
You have mentioned earlier that innovation became like a weapon. So is it a mistake that entrepreneurs makes usually once they grow a company or a gorilla, they became the CEO? Maybe they should be something much closer, as you said, to the customer and more small profile than being a CEO?
I have seen very, very few CEOs be incredibly close to the customer. Mike Rutgers, when he was the CEO of EMC, a large data storage company, over a 10-year period, he had spoken with 500 customers. He had made phone calls over a 10-year period to 600 customers. Very few CEOs do that, to be so in touch with the customers. As companies grow from a monkey to a chimpanzee to a gorilla, they become closer and closer to investors, closer and closer to Wall Street if they're publicly traded. And they spend way more time in financial stuff rather than really understanding the pain of the customers. So I don't see many great CEOs doing that.
Social actually linked to it. Now, we've seen a lot of companies become gorillas and then fall down into monkeys and disappear. And they all seem to have the same kind of issue. They're not focusing on the customer. Yeah. Despite that being obvious, I mean, are they not learning, or is it something that you kind of forget when you're
No, the average CEO in the United States lives for about 4 or 5 years inside a company. While I'm there, I want to milk the hell out of it and then I get out. Okay? Most publicly traded companies and executives, that's what they think about. Okay? And not that different from politicians. Oh, sorry. Okay. I shouldn't be saying that. Okay. So, yes.
Yes, you mentioned innovation and you talked about innovation a lot.
Yeah.
What do you mean by culture? What defines a good culture in an organization?
Can we get this back, please? What is a good culture? Can we get this back? Today we understand culture much better. Culture is again, not this fluffy thing that is nondescript and not well understood. Everybody kind of defines culture in many different ways, especially if you go and ask an organizational behavior professor or an organizational consultant or a leadership professor. They'll say, it is too squishy, we cannot talk about it, it's too mushy. No, that's garbage, okay? We can today define culture in very concrete terms. Very, very concrete terms, and it is measurable. It's basically about how you organize your resources. If you want to really understand culture, it's about how we get things done, processes, how we get rewarded. Because how we get rewarded determines our behaviors. Our values, again, it's not just beautiful things that we write on the board. Values is how you spend. You as an individual, as an executive, how do you spend? How do you spend your time? How do you spend your money? I can tell you exactly what your values are by looking at your bank statement and your calendar on your iPhone. Okay? And we even know, we can measure it. We can measure innovation. We can measure culture. So, and we have database where we have data from 300 companies, 20 countries, 8 languages. Okay? So, if somebody comes and talks about, oh, we can't manage culture, then they're incompetent or they're ignorant. Okay? Huh? Or egocentric. Okay? Or they just haven't bothered to learn. Many, many executives are rich enough that they have the luxury not to learn. Okay? That's their prerogative.
Professor O, quick
question. I recognize you.
Thanks
for coming.
Thanks. Just a quick question about the gorillas that actually have survived so long. Is it primarily in the banking industry? And if yes, just curious about where do you see the
you
future?
find them in all industries. If you go to Japan, you have 1,000-year-old companies in the hospitality industry. Okay? In France, they have created I think it's called a centenarian corporations or 200-year-old corporations, family-run businesses, and they come from almost every industry. Okay?
So I mean, just in terms of what's happening with the banking industry, for example, the innovation that's happening on the cryptocurrency level, where do you see that future holding on, especially with regulation, central banks, cross borders, transfers, etc.?
Yeah. Banks have survived for the longest time because of two things: fees and friction. That's it. Fees and friction. Friction is regulation. So they hide behind regulation and create bureaucracy. And they charge fees for everything. I don't know about Kuwait, but at least in Latin America and other parts of the world, they are charging fees. Even if you go touch the ATM, they charge you a fee. Okay? You pick up the phone, they charge you a fee. Okay? So hopefully all these new technologies will in fact kill more banks. Okay? I'm sitting on an advisory board of a bank and I'm saying this. They may fire me tomorrow. Okay? That's why I'm not a consultant. I'm an academic. Okay? So I have told the CEO directly, you won't exist because you're only hiding behind friction and fees. And all the youngsters, they want it fast and free. Okay? And who doesn't? Okay? Last question, because I've already kept, I don't want the executives to be all sitting because we have lots of questions. Yes, sir.
Okay. So you talked about innovation and creativity, and basically you said that innovation should be looked at as science. However, I didn't get your point about creativity. How should we look at it, and how should we define it?
Yeah. We have good research today, and the research is progressing in understanding human creativity. What makes humans more creative? How can we all get more creative? And in fact, you can we go back to the, yeah. If I had 15, 20 minutes, I would have probably talked more about this. But we know that anybody can be creative. Okay? We all are creative. Unfortunately, over time, we lose our creativity. Why do we lose our creativity? Because of experience, our knowledge, teachers, professors. Okay? Our education model is more than 300 years old, and it's broken. Okay? And so if you look at creativity, we know that creative people, entrepreneurs, serial entrepreneurs, scientists, they all have certain mindset and behaviors. And they use this again and again and again to keep coming up with new things. They are amazing at questioning. They are amazingly curious. They always believe that there's a better way to do things. They're never satisfied with the current solutions that exist. They are amazingly good at observing and listening. We all observe and listen, but unfortunately, we all observe and listen with a bias. We all observe and listen with a prejudice. We all observe and listen based on the biases of our experiences and our egos and our existing knowledge. Great scientists, great entrepreneurs, they observe and listen without bias, without prejudice. They observe the world as is to identify opportunities for change, to identify opportunities for innovation. Also, they're amazingly good at associative thinking. They're very good at connecting the dots. They take things from one industry and apply it in another industry. They look at one country and move it to a different country. And at Babson, we call this copying and stealing. Okay? Copying and stealing is one of the most powerful way to improve your creativity. The more you copy, the more creative you get. The faster you copy, the more creative you get. The Chinese today are amazingly innovative. There are so many innovations that are happening in China because they have copied unbelievably fast. When you copy very fast, very quickly, you hit constraints faster. And when you hit those constraints, it forces you to innovate. It forces you to be creative. Artists are amazingly creative because they're amazing copiers. Okay? So this whole notion of unique value proposition is complete garbage. Okay? Please copy legally. You will become more creative. So we know a lot today about creativity. Okay? And we are understanding more and more. And it's a wonderful weapon that everybody has. We can all do it. Again, do it legally. Is that clear? Thank you very much. Thank you.